Okay. Thank you for watching here on Tube Live at Blooming Light at Blooming Tribe. If you happen to be logging in live, it's going to be Sunday, August the 17th, 2025, approximately 7:22 p.m. Central Standard Time. Otherwise, just if you're a non-crazy and a non-toxic and a non-killer and a non-weirdo and a non-creepy, in other words, just a healthy and relatively grounded being. Thank you for watching. You're not accountable. You're not human trafficking. You're not out here doing weird shit for kibbles and bits. Anywho, here's a good thing, and I thought I would mix it up a little bit because I'm talking a lot about all of the distortion and all of the weird, old, nasty energies. And in part, all of that is to keep the target focused on that. Okay, that's one of their insidious moves and insidious tactics, and it's something that we have to constantly kind of navigate through. Okay, in terms of taking action and doing the things that we need to do versus it's just a distraction to get you to feed because they get desperate for energy. Okay, if they can get you engaged, if they can get you focused in, that's still a form of supply. And it's, once again, that whole toxic kind of strategy that energy vampires do. I'm going to stomp and, and totally get attention. I'm going to, I'll say between stomping and spellcasting, okay? Or whatever it is that they're on, okay? So as we do what we do to handle all that, because we handle it, okay? But then, remember, I'm always talking about going back or coming into the present moment and the good stuff, and how often it's hard to see the forest for the sleeves. Now, in this case, the reason why you all are looking at this plant, it's not just because it's a plant, it's not just because it's green, and it's not just because it's nature. Earlier, I had the plant outside since last night, and then I had moved it forward to get some sun, and it was too much. Like this particular type of plant, it wasn't supposed to. And so when I went outside to get it, I was sad. When I went outside to get it, I was kneeled down. I was like, oh, plant, because it was like all of the top, all of this had withered. It was like drooped. All this had turned down, went psh, like all of it. They was just having a hard time, bitch. And I was sad. So I sit there outside and I did Reiki. I did Reiki for a plant. And so I set some intentions, rub my hands together, concentrated. And then I spoke love and, I sung and like all sorts of stuff over it. I was like, oh, plant, please. And I was like, oh, I said, my apologies. Pardon me if I killed you, plant. I'm new to the plant game. That's what I said to it. And I was like, please, and then I picked it up and brought it inside because I was like, it was done for. Like this whole thing was all flopped. I was like, oh, you're done. Like, I don't even know what I could do. So I just did Reiki. I sat there and did Reiki and I brought it in. And then I kept singing over it. I stood over it and then I left it alone. And then I'm doing clearings in the apartment and, tending to all this other shit. And I just now, because I hadn't paid attention, I was busy doing everything else, helping my son, helping the cat, helping the environment, just focused on that. And right now, I do have some frequencies like a neutralizing hostility, so I got some love stuff penetrating pretty hard. And I came up to it and I was like, what the hell? I was like, no. And I looked at it and I was like, no. I was like, God damn, no, right? Because I really wasn't expecting, I thought it would be more slower or gradual, okay? Even if it worked, I was still like, it's gonna take a moment. It was gone, it was baked, it was out there. It's not finna it ain't finna just spring up, even though, right? So, apparently, within hours, okay, within hours, it's picked all of its back standing up. Because this was gone. This was, I don't want to make it bend. This was like, yeah, That, like, this was gone. This had all bent. So I didn't think there was no hope. I was just sitting in here to, you know, and if it didn't show no improvement, if it kept turning brown and stuff, then I was going to have to just, you know, go ahead and let it go. But no. And I want to invite you all to think about this. If you're not so much into Reiki, okay, that's okay. But for you science nerds out there and you metaphysics nerds, or no, physics, not even physics, okay, science nerds, there's been studies, there's science projects that used to be conducted in school where you're testing how something responds to an environment, okay? One test subject is subject to harsh and hostile environment. They are neglected, okay? They are abandoned, and in some cases, even maybe abused or even toxic verbiage and energy thwarted at it. And longevity of that it just shrivels up and it dies, which is the point of why the toxic people do what they do, by the way. That was just a lucky accident, coinky dink, but it's relevant, okay? And then the other study is what happens with a particular plant or something in an environment where you play classical music, where it's, infused with like love and affirmative and kind, and what happens to the same exact organism. And the hypothesis and the studies come out that even though they're the same, one dies and withers, and the other one sprouts and grows, just like the study with babies. They did studies where, case studies, they're surrounded by love, they're surrounded by nurturing, they thrive, they grow, they're vibrant, their health, their immune system. And then ones that are surrounded by killers, murderers, toxic, abandoned. Oh, I didn't suspect that there was going to be a message with it, but it is. So it's going to prove my point of why they strategize to keep targeted individuals in hostile environments. They're hoping that, like the rest of their little test subjects, like everything else in nature, it will subsequently just wither up and die. So no one has to take accountability that they're skanks, killers and criminals for kibbles and bits, for fame and fortune and notoriety. So that's what they're hoping the science project on targeted ones will resort to. And it has been effective, by the way, until now. There are many targeted individuals that are breaking that are infusing within themselves everything that the world refused to give, because the world is matrixed and manufactured to be against them. Which, just like I sung, I told it that I honored it. I gently touched it. But with love, not with, I want what you have, give it to me. No, I honor you, thank you. Ooh, and I did some humming and stuff. And it's already showing the major improvements. I wonder how much more, if I keep at it consistently, its potential. Just like with the toxicity in the hostile environment, they're hoping that with that consistency and that persistence, right? So how much more powerful then? Because if it can do that with what I did, how much more? Eureka, rather than fighting which is energy and supply they need. They don't know how to self-soothe or feed. Just keep them fighting. Instead of what I just did, brought it to life, pop! Via, not me, via channel, via tapping in, aligning, and concentrated benevolence. Do you see that? Just sincere. This is why I've always said, I find it fascinating, people that are so stuck in that other energy. Oh, what a difference a day make. Oh, what are the possibilities they could themselves even have had if they had chosen to go down a path to where they used all of their capabilities to infuse proper energy into themselves, which would have yielded its own fruit if they would have been just as persistent and as consistent. Anyway, because some people just like the darkness, the dark side, and they don't want to have to, I don't know, they don't want to have to do that. Whatever. But that's a question for the universe out there. Like, oh, what difference would they make if folks would use their energies as such for themselves? Because the only reason why they get into all that is they have a lack mentality somewhere. They don't see any other way to success, abundance, prosperity, victory. They don't see it. They don't. They don't know how else to feel good and better. All they know is that. But just play with it for fun, okay? Of course, this is not the end all be all to nothing, okay? You got to have your grounded practicality to things. But just something that small. What if we could live like a consistency? First towards ourselves, so that we're self-alchemizing, and then the world. What kind of environment, community, space, and life and time could it be if everyone actually knew that we always have a choice to vibrate and create a different kind of reality? That just because we have picked up a momentum in something that we feel like we can't unravel from doesn't mean that that's actually true. It's a matter of a moment, a decision, and an action and a step to change the game. That's real legacy worth leaving.